Hi, welcome to Gamers Chess Club online chess lessons. My name is Jason and this is the 8th lesson in the Introduction to Chess series. Gamers Chess Club is a recreational chess club out of Conroe, Texas, focused on introducing chess to families in a fun and friendly environment. For more information, you can email us at gamerschessclub@gmail.com or visit the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/gamerschessclub. Today's learning objective is to learn ways that a game can end in a draw. Okay, we learned in our last lesson that checkmate was one of the ways that a chess game can end. Another way a chess game can end is a draw. With checkmate, one player wins and one player loses. With a draw, it's a tie. Neither player wins or loses. So there's a few different types of draws we're going to illustrate today. One is a draw by agreement. One is insufficient material. The other is draw by repetition. There's the 50 move rule, and then there's stalemate. Okay, so the first example of a draw is a draw by agreement. This is when one player offers a draw and the other player accepts it. This is typically done when there's a similar amount of material on the board with a slim chance of one player gaining the advantage. So this is just an agreement between the two players that we're going to call it a tie. The next is insufficient material. So this means that a draw occurs when there isn't enough material on the board to checkmate the opponent. The examples are, like one of the examples we see here is a king and a knight versus a king. It's not enough material to checkmate the opponent. Other examples can include a bishop and a king versus a king, or a king versus a king. Okay, a draw by repetition is another example of a draw. A player can claim this draw if the same exact position occurs 3 times in a game. This doesn't necessarily need to happen on consecutive moves. It just means that you've reached the same exact board position for all the pieces 3 different times. We're going to walk through this position on the next slide. Okay, so let's walk through a hypothetical situation where a draw by repetition would be useful in a game. So here we have a game that's come down to just a few pieces. Black is at a disadvantage right now. If it were white's turn, white could get checkmate by moving the queen from d1 to d8. Okay, another example of a draw is what's referred to as the 50 move rule. This rule states that a draw may be claimed by a player if after 50 moves by each player, there's been no pieces captured and no advancement of a pawn. So this means really that the game is not really going anywhere. This draw is one that has to be claimed. It's not automatic. However, there's another rule that states that after 75 moves with the same lack of progress, no pieces have been captured, no pawn advancement, that the game is drawn regardless of whether it is claimed or not. Okay, so the last example of a draw that we're going to talk about is stalemate. So remember that checkmate means that the king is under attack with no way out. Stalemate means that the king is not under attack, but on that player's turn there are no legal moves on the board by any piece. So it's not just that the king can't move, there's no legal moves. So in other words, a player is not in danger but unable to make a move on his or her turn. So in this example, if this is white's turn, the white king is here. He's not in danger. There's no piece that is directly attacking him. The black player just moved his queen from b3 to g3. This was a major mistake, major what's called a blunder in chess, because he could have easily put him in checkmate by just moving one square over. But he did not, and so he left the king not in danger. But it's white's turn, but white doesn't have any moves. The pawns are stuck. They can't go forward. Remember, they can only attack diagonally, and when something's in front of them, they're stuck. So he can't move a pawn, and he can't move his king, because if any square here, he would put his king in danger, and we know that's not allowed. So this is stalemate. So where black should have won this game, black ended up having to settle for a draw. A stalemate is another draw. So here's an example of where it's not stalemate. Okay, so this is similar to the example we showed before, but there's one little difference. So the queen still made a blunder, should have moved over one more square but didn't. The queen moved here to g3. So again, the king can't move. The king has no good square to go to. The king's not in danger. but white does have a move on the board. White can move this pawn. Remember last time we had a pawn in front of him. So this time the pawn can move. So this is not stalemate. Still not good for the white player, not looking good, but it's not quite stalemate. Okay, so white's to move in this situation. Is this stalemate? And if not, what is this called? So remember that stalemate means that there are no legal moves and that the king is not under attack. So pause your video, see if you can figure out if this is stalemate, and if not, what's it called? Okay, so the answer is that this is not stalemate. This is checkmate. While white does not have any legal moves, the king is currently under attack, so that doesn't meet the definition of stalemate. So the king is being attacked, the king has no way out, that's checkmate. We learned that in our last lesson. Okay, so pause your video here, set up your chessboard this way, or take a look at the screen and see if you can figure out the answer. So the black queen just captured a piece on c4. It's white's turn to move. Is this stalemate? And if not, what are white's options? Okay, hopefully you paused your video. The answer is that this is stalemate. There are no legal moves, but the king is not currently under attack. So if it's white's turn, the only piece white has to move is the king. The king can't go to g1 because he'd be under attack by the other king. He can't go to g2 for the same reason, be under attack. And he can't go to h2 because he'd be under attack by the pawn here on g3. So this is stalemate. This would be an example of a draw. This would, again, be a big blunder for the player with the black pieces. Okay, here's an example very similar to our last example. The queen has captured a piece on c4. It's white's turn to move. However, there's a slight difference. So is this stalemate? And if not, what are white's options here? So please, again, pause your video, and hopefully you've done so. Okay, so the answer is that this is not stalemate. Although the king can't move, just like in the last example, the difference is we now have a pawn on f7. So there is a legal move on the board for white. And in this case, it's not a bad legal move. He can go to f8 and promote. Remember, when the pawn gets to the other side of the board, he gets to promote. So he can pick a piece, probably should pick a queen, which would put the black king in check, and then the game's not quite over. Okay, so just to summarize the ways we've talked about ending a chess game. We talked about checkmate in the last lesson. This means that the king is under attack and he has no way out of attack, and so that's game over. Somebody wins. The next is a draw, and we talked about in this lesson several draws. We talked about a draw by agreement. We talked about insufficient material, a draw by repetition, the 50 move rule, and stalemate was our recent example on the last slide. The only other way a chess game can end is by resignation. And so this is when a player gives up, in other words. And in a lot of sports, people are taught and kids are taught, don't give up, fight till the end. In chess, when you're playing with chess players, especially at club level and things like that, it's actually polite if there's really no way to win other than your opponent making a huge mistake. It's actually the polite thing to do is resign the game. You don't have to. You can continue trying to see if your opponent can make a mistake, but the polite thing to do in chess, it's kind of more or less chess etiquette, would be to say, good game, you played a better game than me, I'm going to go ahead and resign. So those are the ways that a game can end. Again, checkmate, one side wins. A draw, it's a tie. Resignation, one side wins. Thanks so much for tuning in. This was our 8th lesson in the Introduction to Chess series. The 8th lesson, once you complete this, it marks the time when you're able to sit down across from an opponent and play an entire chess game. So in the earlier lessons, we learned about the board and the pieces and how those pieces moved, and we set you up to play some practice games where you just put a few pieces on the board and you played against an opponent and you just really focused on how certain pieces moved. Don't stop playing those games. Those are actually really good scenarios to set up and play. But now if you want to, now that we've learned the special moves, in addition to the regular moves that we learned about castling, we learned about en passant. We also learned about how chess games can end. We learned about checkmate. We learned about draws in this lesson, several forms of draws, and we learned about resigning a game if you have to. And now you really have everything you need to know to play a full chess game. So enjoy playing a game. I hope to see you in future lessons. And thanks again for tuning in.